everyone, welcome back to Kevin Reviews and happy Valentine's Day. I hope everyone who has a partner is coupled up and is having a great Valentine's Day. And for all you singles, I whether you enjoy being single, that's totally fine. If you are one who really wants to hope for find somebody one of these days, I really do hope you find someone that would love you just as much as you should love yourself. So, in any case, I've rewatched Hitch. I've rewatched Hitch. I it was the poll showed it was a tie between Hitch and When Harry Met Sally. I have not seen When Harry Met Sally, except for maybe the first 20 minutes, but I never got around to finishing it. And even when I saw the first 20 minutes, I wasn't a big fan. I wasn't getting into it. So I kind of figured just maybe review something I have seen before that's a bit more positive. Because the last review I did was, you know, My Bloody Valentine, which I didn't like that much, but had its moments. So in any case, I here's Hitch, but this is directed by Columbia Pictures and Overbrook Entertainment, directed by Andy Tennant, who did Sweet Home Alabama, Fool's Gold, and Ever After, Cinderella Story with Drew Barrymore. This is written by Kevin Bisch, and the cast includes Will Smith, Kevin James, Eva Mendes, Amber Valletta, and Julianne Ann Emery. So this film came out really close to Valentine's Day. It was a perfect Valentine's Day film in 2005. For a film that had $70 million in its budget, it made back um, over $370 million. It's quite impressive for this film. I'm not 100% certain it's remembered as much as it today as it was back then, but it was the biggest thing because you got a huge cast, pretty good sized cast of memorable actors and actresses. Will Smith, Eva Mendes, comedian Kevin James. Um, but you got all that, and the set up the idea of a date doctor was an interesting one that did push some boundaries. I don't know if it's really that new, but it is it was quite impressive, at least for me growing up, because I saw this. I think I was a sophomore in high school, so you know, I was getting into the rom-com stuff. In any case, yeah, this was seen as a really great film. Although reviews nowadays, I think, are pretty mixed bag. It's well in the 60s on Rotten Tomatoes for both critics and audiences, but I think they like it. There's a lot to like about the film, um, despite maybe kind of knowing where it's going to go. So after rewatch, this is my review of Hitch from 2005. So the story goes in Hitch is Alex Hitchens, or Hitch, is the date doctor. He helps men who really have no game to get game, basically, to woo over the woman that they have affection for. Not so much to like get in bed with, but to actually develop a new connection that actually like women and they want to be with that woman to for hopefully in the future. So Hitch has been doing really great at his job. Then he gets a client by the name of Albert Brenneman, played by Kevin James, who's this kind of the hefty guy who's kind of a dork, who is a klutz even, and he wants to help woo over a celebrity by the name of Allegra Cole, played by Amber Valletta. And you know, I think Hitch even says, he's Michelangelo versus Albert Brenneman, who's the Sistine Chapel. So he has a lot to work with that he hopes to help Albert, woo the affection for, I hope I'm saying this right, for Allegra Cole. At the same time, Will Smith soon meets up with Sarah Milas, who's a gossip columnist oftentimes is a workaholic, and she wasn't really looking into dating, but soon eventually meets Hitch and starts dating him, and they both start to connect in an interesting way. But of course, that puts Hitch's job in jeopardy because she's a gossip columnist. So, and his practice involves, secrecy, and he's actually become kind of a urban myth around New York, where this takes place. So the question is Hitch going to be able to, find love himself as well as help Albert Brenneman get, make sure he gets high tally, gets Allegra Cole. Well, that's pretty much the movie. Um, After rewatching it, I have to say I do still like the movie. Again, as I said, when other comedic films, the comedy isn't as strong because I've seen it by myself. I've seen this before and seen it by myself. The comedy is not that strong. It is a bit cringy and cartoony, but it's still charming. The film oozes charm. I mean, even Will Smith oozes a lot of charm, and most often his films, he's always very charming, always know always seems to know what he's doing, whether doing or he's not doing. He and his character is also very interesting because he's a smooth talker, but he has an interesting backstory where you can understand why he's doing what he's doing. Um, and it's also interesting because he's not when he's trying to actually date Sarah Milas, he's not exactly as smooth as you think. He is kind of a screw up. Um, and that relates to what his backstory is a little bit. But, so he's kind of an interesting character. I think nowadays, I think some women may find him a problem, and the film does address that it is kind of a problem because he's the one basically making the men, get the women. And there's like a scene where he tries to set up help his client out with one woman by having her dog come out of the elevator and with using another dog, and then basically handing off the woman's dog to his client, where they make it look like that the client saved her dog. And yeah, that's a bit underhanded and kind of wrong. Especially, I think even nowadays when you look at it, it doesn't really that particular scene doesn't hold up very well. But I think even for 2005, it's I don't know. You could cut it maybe a little bit of slack, but I can totally understand if you don't. I mean, but I think nowadays, it's like people want realism or want you know an idea of how what the person really is like. But at the same time, there are people who really have a hard time just putting themselves out there and they need a little bit of help. So I can forgive some of that stuff that Hitch does, but not everybody. And I totally understand, especially for women who can't forgive what Hitch does. That's totally understandable. Um, Eva Mendes playing Sarah Miles is also interesting. It kind of certainly offsets. Is like the opposite of Hitch. She's a workaholic. She enjoys what she does, but she doesn't really seem to have time for a boyfriend or doesn't really has a lot of trust issues. Um, especially with men because all she kind of sees as men just wanting to get into, sleep with women a lot. And we do get a character later on. He's not that important, uh, he but he kind of becomes he's not actually no he is kind of important, but he's not in the film for very long. But he becomes a the catalyst for the climax of the film, um because they do address that there are some men who do want to just sleep with women because that makes them feel powerful or something like that, or makes them feel in control. And Hitch has standards. He definitely has standards. Let me be frank with that. He does have standards. He he's he's more focused on the men who really has feelings and just wants some, a meaningful, deep connection with the women his clients want them to have. Um, so I hope I'm making sense there. Um, Kevin James is also, kind of a breath of fresh air, I guess, because I don't know. Recent years with Kevin James, it's a lot of it is most often not in Adam Sandler comedies, and which I'm not a big fan of. I mean, I remember reviewing QB Halloween, and yeah, he wasn't that great. And this one, he does do it well. The writing for him, as well as the writing for all the characters, are done very well. It's a bit cartoonish, but again, I think that's part of its charm. It's not so over the top. It kind of bounces pretty evenly. Um, but yeah, and I gotta say it's impressive to see Kevin James even move because there are some dancing scenes with him in the film, and he does do a majority of them. Though I'm assuming because of his hefty size, they have some stunt coordinators trying to work with him to make sure he's okay. But it is still impressive to see him do some of the dance moves, and there is one like way near the end that he does that normally big guys like myself even wouldn't be able to do. So it is impressive for what it is. Yeah, there's not a ton I could say about the film. I think the film is good. It has a lot of charm. The comedy is best with an audience. It's audience overall. I guess if I have to say it feels maybe a little bit too long, or it could have been shortened just a tiny bit. Some scenes could have been cut out entirely. I don't know, but I mean, some of the comedic bits work. I mean, you've seen the trailer. There's a scene where Will Smith and Kevin James are practicing the kissing scene, and it's pretty funny. It's pretty funny for what it is. It's cringy, kind of that cringe, funny charm in it, I guess you could say. Um, but yeah, I'm gonna pause here. Yeah, sorry. I guess the one thing that the critics I think are most often right is that the story is very predictable. It kind of is. It is pretty predictable overall, but I gotta say I like the idea of its message. It's usually just be yourself, but it doesn't quite say you know it. I don't know. I think the one thing it does try to mention is that you know there shouldn't be any principles. It's just like be yourself. But I don't know. At times it seems like being yourself isn't as good enough, and it does address that because if it does address that at one point, because even if Hitch was not involved, would Albert Brenneman be able to talk to Allegra Cole at all and win her affection? It's probably not likely. So I mean, having Hitch help him was very helpful basically. I'm sorry. Um, so I don't know. Yeah, it does address that sometimes we all need that little push. We all need a little push, as the Joker from The Dark Knight would say, um, to get us going, and get us be get put us ourselves out there to find that person that would just love us for what we are. But yeah, I think it's a good message. Just be yourself, but don't be afraid to ask for help. There's no principles, even though they like to, because he's the date doctor. He knows he's supposed to know how a woman thinks or work, like in terms of lying. I don't know if necessarily all of that holds up nowadays. In fact, rewatching again, I almost feel like this could be a good sequel, or at least a remake. With dating nowadays, um, involving online, dating apps, high tech, just and even sensitivities and stuff like that. I think there is potential for it if possible. Whether Will Smith will do it or not, I don't know. But even if not, I see a potential for it, a sequel or a remake that meets with today's standard. Granted, there has been probably other rom coms who kind of did the tackle this same issue, and that's totally understandable. I'm not quite caught up on the rom com stuff for the 2020s, but regardless, it's still a worthwhile thing to look at. I think, in my opinion. Um, is there anything else? Um, yeah, I don't think there's. I think I so far I've said a lot of positive things. I guess, like I said, the only negative I can think of as a story is pretty much predictable, and I think it goes on a little bit too long. And the pacing does at times feels like it's sluggish. And yes, because I saw this by myself, the comedy isn't as strong. So I think I want to give Hitch. I want to be slightly generous, but 3.5. I'm thinking 3.5 is a good start. I'm sorry if I don't go into have much detail or if I'm stuck talking about it because I'm not. When it comes to movies like Hitch involving romance and rom coms, basically, as I do like rom coms, I like the idea of exploring, certain connections and relationships in meaningful ways, or have an idea of how men want to think relationships are supposed to be versus women how they think relationships should be. Um, there's no easy answer to those. And I'm not an expert at it at all. I don't want to go too deep because it's kind of personal, but yeah, it's not one I'm well versed at or great at explaining. So I'm doing my best based on what I could gather from the film, rewatching it, and I hope I made sense. So, but yeah, I think Hitch is a good time that I suggest you watch with an audience, whether it's with your significant other, family. I think is okay too. I think this is a fun film. It's a fun, funny, charming, lot of charm, um, you know, of a film. So, what are your thoughts on Hitch? Leave in the comments below. Give a like or dislike the review if you wish, and feel free to subscribe to my channel. And I will see you guys in the next review. Bye.